The 19th century was an interesting and transformative period for American belief systems, especially in the northeastern states. There was transcendentalism, revivalism with its fiery traveling preachers, spiritualists such as the Fox sisters, who took their seances on tour, Joseph Smith who claimed to have translated golden tablets with Egyptian hieroglyphics which became the Book of Mormon, and there were the millennialists such as William Miller. William Miller became famous for predicting the end of the world. He initially predicted it would happen between March 21, 1843 and March 21, 1844. Jesus was supposed to appear, and then Miller and his followers were to ascend into heaven. Their deceased loved ones were to rise out of their graves and join them, after which the earth would be purified by fire. When he didn't appear and the ascension failed to take place, the date was revised to April 18, 1844. When that date passed, there was another adjustment to the calculation and the final date of October 22, 1844 was set. The website massmoments.org has a collection of some of the things which took place among Miller's followers. Quote, "In the town of Harvard, one man sold his cows at great sacrifice because there would be no one to care for them when he was gone up." Unquote. Quote, "Women in the Worcester area cut off their hair, removed the ruffles from their dresses, threw or gave away their jewelry, and, in some cases, everything they owned. Others broke up all their furniture declaring that they would no longer have use for tables or chairs or beds. Wanting to be suitably attired for heaven, Millerites made long white garments for themselves that they called their ascension robes." Unquote. Quote, "On October 22nd, believers donned their robes. A large gathering lived in or around Groton. Believing that Christ would return on a mountaintop, they climbed up Mount Wachusett to await the coming of the Lord. One respectable but arthritic old man from Harvard who could not make it up the mountain stationed himself at the very top of the tallest apple tree in his orchard and waited out the night. In New Bedford, a whole family perched on the branches of an apple tree dressed in their white robes." Unquote. Other Millerites simply climbed onto their rooftops. It was a sad ending, which they themselves called the Great Disappointment. William Miller was the oldest of 16 children, the son of a farmer, and actually quite a remarkable fellow. He was raised a Baptist, and although he didn't have a great deal of formal education, he was a voracious reader. He married a young woman from a well-situated family, and was introduced to several prominent men who lent him books from Voltaire and other deists. For a time Miller became a deist, believing rationality and observation were all one needed to believe in God. Shortly after returning home from his military service in the War of 1812, he also returned to his Christian faith. To defend challenges to his newfound Christian faith by his deist friends, Miller set about studying the Bible, line by line, and chapter by chapter. It was this particular verse, number 14 in the 8th chapter of the book of Daniel, quote, "Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed." Unquote, which led Miller to believe he had unlocked the secret of when Jesus Christ would return, and when the world would end. If you'd like to take a deep dive, check the description box for links. One can easily get the impression that William Miller was alone in the Millennium movement, but that was not the case. Here is a passage from the book, The Great Second Advent Movement, Its Rise and Progress by J. N. Loughborough, first published 1905. Quote, "Pastor G. W. Mitchell, of Zanesville, Ohio, another minister who himself proclaimed the doctrine, said William Miller told him that he had the names and addresses of 3,000 ministers in various parts of the globe who were proclaiming, 'The hour of his judgment is come.' The greater portion of these being in North America and Great Britain. William Miller said, 1 or 2 in every quarter of the globe have proclaimed the news, and all agree in the time. Wolfe of Asia, Irving, Late of England, Mason of Scotland, Davis of South Carolina, and quite a number in this region, are, or have been, giving the cry. Some people, unacquainted with the facts, have looked upon the Second Advent movement as limited to a certain locality, supposing it a work connected with William Miller and a few hundred ministers associated with him in the northern portion of the United States. To such it may be a surprise to learn that the movement in America, in which elders Miller and Himes were prominent leaders, was but a small part of a great movement that, as stated above, went to the ends of the earth. Unquote. From the book, The Great Second Advent Movement, Its Rise and Progress. By the way, that book also has an explanation of the 1260-year prophecy. It relates the 1260 years to the dominion of the Roman papacy granted in AD 533 by the Emperor Justinian, recognizing the absolute headship of the Bishop of Rome over the churches, and sealed by the sword when the Romans defeated the Goths in 538. Then 1260 years later, in 1793, there was a decree by France to abolish church and religion. Then in 1797, quote, Pope Pius VI fell grievously ill. Napoleon gave orders that in the event of his death no successor should be elected to his office, and that the papacy should be discontinued. Unquote. From the book, Our Day in the Light of Prophecy by W. A. Spicer, quote. With the ending of the 1260 years of papal supremacy, a new order was ushered in. The papacy had stood for absolutism in state as well as church. Now the power of absolutism was broken. Absolute monarchy, Edmund Burke said at the time, breathed its last without a struggle. There came the dawn of an era of greater religious liberty and enlightenment, that has spread blessings over all lands. Unquote. William Miller died in 1849, still convinced of the imminent end of the world and return of Christ. He answered the question of when, but there were two other vital questions. Where? And how? Another millennial group of Christians from Germany, originally under the leadership of Leonard H. Kelber, were, like the Millerites, disappointed when Christ didn't appear to them between 1843 and 1845. Undeterred, they were confident they had answered the question of where he would appear, so they resettled in the Holy Lands at the base of Mount Carmel to await Christ's return. Thus the questions of when, and where, were answered. But as it was with Christ's first appearance, their expectations of how it would happen were not fulfilled.